Good morning everyone. On this video we have one of our students and he's going to talk about an interesting topic on this presentation. So, could you please introduce yourself?
Good morning, teacher. I am Agustin Cabrera. I am a B1 level student, and I went to I want to present my interview of the level. Today I'm going to talk about one of the most fascinating and tense periods in world history, the Cold War. For over 4 decades, the world was divided into two opposing camps, led by the United States and the Soviet Union. This era was marked by ideological rivalry, nuclear threats, and global tension, but it also spurred incredible advancements in technology and science. By the end of this presentation, you will understand how the Cold War began, its key events, and how it still influences the world today. The origins of the Cold War. The Cold War didn't start with a bang, but rather a slow build-up of tension after World War II. The US and the USSR, once allies against Nazi Germany, found themselves at odds. The US promoted the capitalism and democracy, while the Soviet Union promoted communism and state control. This ideological divide was deepened by events like the Yalta and Potsdam conferences in 1945, which the two powers closed over the future of Europe. The US introduced the Truman Doctrine in 1947, promising to contain the communism, and the Marshall Plan, which provided economic aid to rebuild wars on Europe. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union tightened its control over the eastern of Europe, creating a buffer zone of satellite states. Winston Churchill called this division the Iron Curtain, symbolizing the split between East and West. Key events of the Cold War. The Cold War was defined by several major events that kept the world on edge. First, there was the arms race. Both superpowers amassed nuclear weapons, leading to a doctrine called mutually assured destruction, or MAD. The closest the world came to a nuclear war was during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, when the US discovered Soviet missiles in Cuba. Fortunately, diplomacy prevailed, but the threat of annihilation loomed large. Next, there was the space race, a competition for technological supremacy. The Soviets took the lead with the launch of Sputnik, and the US responded with the Apollo program, landing the first humans on the moon in 1969. This race was not just about space, it was about proving which system was superior. Next, there were the proxy wars. The US and the USSR supported opposing camps in different conflicts around the world. For example, the Vietnam War and the Korean War. The two superpowers fought indirectly, causing immense suffering in these regions. Finally, the Berlin Wall, built in 1961, it divided East and West Germany, separating families and ideologies until its fall in 1989. The end of the Cold War. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union was struggling. Its economy could not keep up with the US, and its people were growing restless. Enter Mikhail Gorbachev, a Soviet leader who introduced reforms like perestroika and glasnost. These policies aimed to modernize the USSR, but instead weakened its control. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 was a turning point. It symbolized the end of division and the triumph of freedom over oppression. 2 years later, the Soviet Union dissolved. The US emerged as a world sole superpower, but the legacy of this era will continue to shape global politics. Lasting impacts of the Cold War. The Cold War left a profound mark on the world. Politically, it reshaped international allies. North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, formed to counter the Soviet influence, remains a key player in global security. Economically, the US solidified its position as a leader, while the Russia was struggling to redefine itself. Technologically, the Cold War drove innovation. The space race gave us satellites, the GPS, and even the internet, which began as a military project. Culturally, this era inspired countless books, movies, and artworks, from spy thrillers like James Bond to styles like Doctor Strangelove. Uh, Even today, we see the Cold War echoes in the US-Russia tensions, the rise of China and conflicts in regions like the Middle East and Eastern Europe. The Cold War reminds us the importance of diplomacy and the dangers of the ex- ideological extremists. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. Now let me ask you a few questions. Okay, so number one, why was it called the Cold War?
The Cold War was a conflict between the United States it's that supported the democracy and capitalism, and the Soviet Union that supported communism and state control.
Yeah, but why does it have this name?
This name is because the two countries fought indirectly in different regions around the world.
Okay. Why did the Cold War start after World War II?
The Cold War started after the World War II because the US and the USSR fought uh, because they want to take the freedom regions that the World War II left, and also the for the division of Europe.
What was the Iron Curtain?
The Iron Curtain is a uh, ideological division between the Western of Europe that supported the communism and the Eastern Europe that supported the capitalist Europe.
What was the role of nuclear weapons in the Cold War?
The new weapons has a key role because with these arms, the US and the USSR fought indirectly and causing suffering in different regions around the world.
Why was the Berlin Wall built? What is the reason?
The Berlin Wall built because the West Germany, supported by the United States and allies, wants to be free, but the east of Germany and east of Berlin, under of the communist state, they want to blockade its freedom.
What was the Korean War?
The Korean War was a conflict in 1955 between the North Korea, supported by the Soviet Union, and the South of Korea, supported by the United States and allies for the Korean Peninsula. It ended with the separating of this country.
Okay. How did the Cold War affect today's world? Are there any remaining consequences?
Yes, even today we see the Cold War echoes in the US and the USSR tensions. For example, in the rise of China and different conflicts around the world in regions like the Eastern of Europe and the Middle East.
How is the Cold War different from other wars that happened in history?
And the main difference is that the two superpowers fought indirectly and causing immense suffering in different countries.
Okay. Do you think, in your opinion, do you think another Cold War could happen in the future, or maybe another similar event?
Yes, I consider that Cold War today would happen, but in the other way, like the in technology wars and and tensions between the United States and Russia.
Okay. Yep. Thank you for your presentation, Agustin.